Well, Joe Biden and NATO have effectively declared war on Russia as Ukrainian leader Zelensky is off to Washington to discuss missile strike targets inside Russia, an escalation that could ignite World War III. And of course, we're seeing a lot of that escalation happening now, as I'm going to show you in this video from the Reese report in just a little bit, as we have seen a major escalation towards World War III over this past week, as pretty much all the NATO nations, the Netherlands, the UK, even Switzerland's on board, right? They're not even officially in NATO. But essentially every NATO country, except for the US, has come out and said that, yes, Ukraine should be able to use long-range weapons inside of Russia. And Russia has come out quite unequivocally and said that this will be direct war. Moscow's envoy to the UN has reiterated where the Kremlin red line is. And of course, yes, I know I'm sick of red lines too. I get that. But this is getting pretty serious now as it starts to escalate into this level of deep strikes from Ukraine. And of course, all of this is going to require NATO intervention to operate these weapon systems, these Storm Shadow missiles, these ATACMS, US systems, or however you pronounce that. See what I'm saying? All of these things have to be operated by NATO forces, which come from Europe and the US. It's just that simple. Ukraine doesn't have much of a fighting force left, you guys. They've been conscripting everybody that they can, including the mentally retarded and women, putting them out in the front lines to die. It's just a big meat grinder. That's all it's been for them. And a big testing ground for weapons on both sides. War is hell. War is horrible. But a direct war with the United States and the rest of the NATO countries in Europe is coming very soon. Let's get into this. So this is from AsiaTimes.com. There's no other way to interpret it. Washington and its client NATO members are declaring war on Russia. That is the direct meaning of President Zelensky's forthcoming visit to Washington, where the parties will agree on targets inside Russia. To say this is an insane, reckless move is an understatement. This is the most dangerous step possible for the US and NATO, and will likely lead to World War III. Yes, this is the worldwide Armageddon that Leland and I have talked about. So don't believe any rhetoric justifying the use of long-range missiles on Russia. Putin has pointed out that while Ukraine will host the missiles, they will be fired by NATO personnel, who will also insert the targeting data coming in from overhead satellites covering Russian territory. Those satellites are American, you guys. This is why they're going to have to strike America. At the very least, as a show of force, Russia is probably going to take out all of our satellites. So we can't do this with Ukraine anymore. That would be a first step that may not trigger a nuclear response right away, or a huge response from NATO right away, but you never know. As we've seen, NATO's just itching for an excuse to get into this directly, and Russia hasn't taken the bait in 2.5 years. Once again, there's also that playbook we always talk about. Now, the upcoming Zelensky-Joe Biden meeting should also include Vice President Harris, so she takes full responsibility for starting a war. All she can do is cackle and ramble about nonsense, so she's brain dead as it gets. But no one can presume what the outcome will be. Will Russia unleash nuclear weapons and bring a definitive end to the Ukraine war? Will it shoot down American satellites? Will Russia send rockets to hit supply depots in Europe, especially in Poland, which is the jumping off point for military supplies to Ukraine? And don't forget about Germany. They bring in a lot of stuff too. There are many other possibilities open to Russia, and they could transfer nuclear weapons to Iran, for example, or maybe even Syria. Well, Iran already has some, but they could get more. The truth is, Washington wants to take up Zelensky's proposal for deep strikes on Russian territory because Ukraine is losing the war and could be defeated even before the presidential elections in November, which we all know are a farce. Well, the Biden-Harris team will have to explain why they kept backing a loser, causing tens of thousands of casualties instead of seeking a diplomatic settlement that was easily within their grasp. Yes, and that one that Victoria Nuland now is cackling about and bragging about that she helped put a stop to that, effectively admitting that NATO and the US caused a coup in Ukraine back in 2014 because the leadership at the time wasn't going along with what NATO and the US wanted, which eventually, as we can see now, is war with Russia. 8 years later, that war began. Anyway, they've effectively declared war with their new stances here. And then we have this major escalation towards World War III that will play for you now. This is from the Reese report. It's about 4 minutes long, so we'll go ahead and play that for you now.
In February of 2022, President Joe Biden threatened the Nord Stream pipeline.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will. I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
1 month later, he was a harbinger for World War III.
We're showing the strength and we'll never falter. But look, the idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III.
Yes, it is. And he's bringing us right headlong into it. Of course, he's not. He's just a puppet. That's not even the real Joe Biden anymore. But the point is, this is where we're going. That's where they're bringing us.
Okay? Let's get it straight here, guys.
6 months later, the Nord Stream pipeline was destroyed by NATO forces. NATO forces who overthrew the Ukraine government 10 years ago. NATO forces who have been building bioweapons labs and missile systems along the Russian border for decades. And now, NATO forces are discussing plans to deploy advanced long-range weapons to target deep into Russia, which would most definitely trigger a full-scale war with Russia. Vladimir Putin responded yesterday to this major escalation. He said that this is an attempt at manipulation, because it is not about allowing or forbidding the Kiev regime from striking inside Russia. They are already doing that with drones, flying devices, and other means. But when it comes to using AI precision weapons, long-range Western-made ones, that's a completely different story. The point is, and I've already mentioned this, any experts could confirm this, both ours and Western ones, that the Ukrainian army is not capable of launching strikes with modern, high-precision, long-range, Western-made systems. This is only possible with the use of a proprietary system, which Ukraine does not have. This information comes only from European Union or United States satellites, essentially NATO satellites. That is the first thing, and very importantly, maybe the key thing, is that flight missions on these rocket systems can basically only be programmed by military personnel from NATO countries. Ukrainian servicemen are not able to do this. That's why it's not about allowing the Ukrainian regime to strike Russia with these weapons or not allowing it. It's about deciding whether NATO countries directly participate in the military conflict or not. If this decision is made, it will mean nothing less than the direct involvement of NATO countries, the United States and European countries, in the war in Ukraine. This is their direct involvement, and it significantly changes the nature of the conflict. It would mean that NATO countries, the USA and European countries, are at war with Russia. And if so, given the change in the nature of the conflict, we will make the corresponding decisions based on the threats posed to us. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
And there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth. They'll have to make adjustments on, as based on the threats that they're now facing. Will that include a nuclear response? Well, we'll have to see. Time will tell. But we are definitely ready. They say they are definitely ready to hit Romania, Poland, Bulgaria after the USA and Germany. That's if Western weapons hit targets deep inside Russia, which the go-ahead's already been given, guys. It's just a matter of formalities now as far as to when they start using these things. The comments come in the middle of a discussion about whether Ukraine should be allowed to use large Western missiles. And the Russians are saying if the U.S. allows Ukraine to use long-range missiles to strike deep into Russia, the Russian armed forces saying that, well, they'll be forced to attack Germany and the United States if the hypothetical blows to large-scale missile warehouses actually happen. So they will attack Poland, they will attack Germany, and wherever else they need to hit to stop these weapons from coming into Ukraine in the first place, which, I understand that Russia doesn't want to escalate this into a nuclear war any more than, the people here do. Unfortunately, the governments in the West have different ideas. And of course, the powers that be, the so-called elites, have different ideas. And this is worldwide Armageddon starting to play out right now. This is God's plan playing out. And there's no stopping it. There's not going to be any peace agreements that are going to last. They're going to keep talking about it, but it's never going to happen. So they're ready to hit these targets, guys, in the West, if these weapons get deployed, and it looks like they will be. Russia's deputy foreign minister from HalTurner.com says U.S. gave carte blanche for Kiev to attack Russia. Our response will be brutal. Russia's deputy foreign minister, Sergei Rybkov, remarked today the United States has given Kiev the carte blanche to strike with long-range weapons deep into Russian territory. Moscow's response to it will be brutal. He went on to say there's an element of serious risk here because the opponents in Washington, London, and other places clearly underestimate the degree of danger of the game they continue to play. Well, we've talked about this before on this channel, on this website, that nobody's taking Russia's red line seriously now because they keep changing. And they keep saying, oh, we're going to do this now, we're going to do it, and they don't. And so everybody's just like, yeah, you're crying wolf again. But now this is different. Like Putin just said, now these are long-range, precision, AI-controlled, as he just said, attack weapons, some of which are probably never been seen before. You never know what they're going to deploy these days. We've got stuff that's 60 years ahead of where we think we are. But anyway, once that starts to happen, it's game on. Anything could happen. We know there's Russian subs patrolling around different NATO countries, including the US. Nuclear weapons can launch from there. They don't have to be ICBMs coming all the way from Russia. Just saying. They can get here in no time with submarine weapons. But yesterday, the White House did not announce that after meeting between Biden and Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom, that any approval was given to Ukraine to use Western-supplied missiles to strike Russia. There's been zero official word from the US or UK indicating any such a grant of permission was given to Ukraine. But of course, this could be by design. As mentioned on the Hal Turner radio show last night, one possibility coming out of the meeting between Biden and Starmer was that the Ukraine was given permission, but it's being kept quiet until Ukraine actually commences large missile attacks against Russia. And we talked about this in the last broadcast. I said that they may go ahead and just keep this on the down low until it actually starts happening. Then they'd also have some plausible deniability and say to the press, well, we discussed it, but we didn't actually give them permission. Ukraine's gone rogue, blah, 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 just like they did with the Nord Stream pipeline, even though everybody knows that's complete garbage. It was all NATO and the US is doing. But anyway, if this is correct, then the world may witness a sudden, very large barrage of missiles fired from inside Ukraine into pre-war Russia. An international observer told me he expects things would go like this. If NATO gave permission to Ukraine to use cruise missiles like the Storm Shadows, etc., on the territory of old Russia, the Russian Federation will consider that act as NATO directly attacking the Russian Federation. NATO would have struck first, and the Russian Federation would then defend itself. Also, that gives NATO or Russia the ability to activate all mutual defense treaties and other international agreements that the Russian Federation has. The Russian Federation would also invoke Article 51 of the UN Charter, which holds that nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense if an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations. So they can defend themselves, and that's just common sense. You don't need the UN to tell you that. In that case, the Russian Federation will likely retaliate, attack NATO bases and territory with cruise missiles. The Russian Federation has much bigger output of cruise missiles and more and different types in its arsenal. And then after that step, NATO will have an excuse to enter to the Ukraine front line, because why not? NATO countries are already being hit with cruise missiles. And then would be in the war, officially declared in the UN. We're at the precipice of these events, in Hal's humble opinion, and mine too. As we talked about in the last broadcast, these things are going to happen all at once in rapid succession. You're going to have North Korea going against South Korea, Iran attacking Israel. China's going to go into Taiwan, maybe the Philippines too, right? And let's not forget about Japan and what's going on there. We'll get to that in a second. So much to cover here, guys. That's why this is going to be a longer broadcast. I hope you bought your popcorn. Russian diplomatic families have left the U.S. You've probably seen this floating around already. But the family of Russian Ambassador Anatoly Antonov has reportedly left the U.S. and returned to Russia. The families of other senior diplomats from Russia's embassy in Washington and its consulate in New York also reportedly departed from the U.S. earlier this week. According to sources familiar with the Russian diplomatic operations here in the U.S., the remaining senior diplomats from Russia are operating now with skeleton staffs and at the embassy and the consulates. So Russia has sent most non-essential personnel back to Russia. Then we have this from RT, as Russia warns NATO of direct war over Ukraine. Moscow's envoy to the UN has reiterated where the Kremlin's red line is. We talked about this in the last broadcast, but here it is from RT. As they're saying again, granting Kiev permission to use Western-supplied long-range weapons would constitute direct involvement in the Ukraine conflict by NATO. It's just that simple. And then it's game on for anything. And then we move to Japan, as they're scrambling jets as Russian aircraft circles their country. And this is all over these missiles, these formerly restricted missiles that the U.S. wants to put there. Russia and China do not want them there. So Japan scrambled fighter jets after Russian aircraft flew around the archipelago for the first time in 5 years. Tokyo's defense ministry said on Friday. From Thursday morning to afternoon, Russian Tu-142 aircraft flew from the sea between Japan and South Korea toward the Okinawa region, according to a statement by the defense ministry. They then went northwards over the Pacific Ocean and finished their journey off over northern Hokkaido Island. The planes did not enter Japanese airspace, but flew over an area subject to a territorial dispute between Japan and Russia. In response, we mobilized air self-defense force fighter jets on an emergency basis. And then this, U.S. scrambles fighter jets to intercept Russian aircraft near Alaska. Just doesn't stop, does it? The U.S. scrambled fighter jets after Russian military aircraft were detected near Alaska. NORAD said Wednesday that detected, tracked, and intercepted 2 Russian military aircraft operating in the Alaska Air Defense Identification Zone. In a post on X, formerly known as Twitter, NORAD said the U.S. fighter jets had conducted the intercept. The Russian aircraft remained in international airspace and did not enter American or Canadian sovereign airspace. This Russian activity in the Alaskan Air Defense Zone is not seen as a threat, and NORAD will continue to monitor competitor activity near North America and meet presence with presence. And don't forget, they're drilling with Japan and doing this to Alaska as well, guys. That was like, what, a week or so ago? Wow. Everything happened so quickly. And then North Korea, like we just talked about. North Korea's Kim Jong-un meets with Russia's Shoigu Remember, this is all going to happen at once, guys. And we're probably talking about strategy when this all kicks off. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met with top Russian security official Sergei Shoigu and discussed deepening strategic dialogue between the two countries. They had a wide exchange of views on regional and international situations and reached a satisfactory consensus on issues including more cooperation to defend mutual safety interests. Gee, I wonder against who? Kim said North Korea will continue to expand cooperation with Russia in accordance with the strategic partnership between the two countries. The United States and Ukraine, among other countries, as well as independent analysts, say that Kim is helping Russia in its invasion of Ukraine by supplying rockets and missiles in return for economic and other military assistance from Moscow. Gee, like NATO and the US haven't been doing that in other countries for, I don't know, centuries. I mean, just saying. Wow. It's horrible when other countries do it, but it's giving other countries freedom, I guess, when we do it, right? I mean, it's just so hypocritical. Let's see, what else have I got on my list here that we need to cover? Oh, yes. We're going to go back to this story. And some of you are trying to tell me that this didn't happen. Guys, I've seen a video from Really Graceful where she had over 150 responses from people in Springfield saying that, yes, this has happened. And it continues to happen, and it continues to get worse. The Haitians are not accountable for the crimes that they commit, and a lot of these immigrants aren't. I went through it in North Dakota back in the early 2000s with the Bosnians. They were just not accountable, and the police told me, John, our hands are tied, because they go to the court and they pretend that they're ignorant because they don't understand the language, or they pretend they don't understand the language. Then they get off. And that was, 25 years ago. Just saying, this has been going on for a long time. And it's just getting worse with this invasion that continues to happen. So here's some more cats that have been blurred out here. They were found mutilated, these remains. So as the Gateway Pundit reported, Springfield, Ohio residents have alleged Haitians in their town are grabbing up ducks by their necks, decapitating them, and walking off with them to eat. This is what they did in their country, guys, to survive. So that's part of it, but the other part of it is voodoo rituals. Others revealed how the massive influx of immigrants, thanks to border czar Kamala Harris, has drained Springfield's resources and turned a once safe city into a crime-ridden hell. One resident even claims she spotted a cat hanging from a branch and being carved up for food by Haitian immigrants. Reports have also emerged that American veterans who have put their lives on the line are getting denied benefits, while Haitians sponge off the taxpayers for absolutely nothing. Now, a sick and horrifying story has emerged in Houston, Texas, that possibly lends credibility to the claims in Springfield. KPRC2 reported Thursday that several cats have been found dead and cut in half in Houston's East End neighborhood. The Houston Police Department is investigating and asking for the public's help to determine whether a demented person is responsible or whether it's another animal. HPD says there have been at least 3 cases in recent days of dead cats showing up mutilated in the area. The first case was reported August 26th, the second on Sunday, and the third on Wednesday. In each gruesome case, the cats were found cut in half. The paws were cleanly chopped off with no blood at the scene. That's probably because they were drained for ritual purposes, guys and gals. And neighbors told KPRC2 that all the dead cats were found within a block of the South Lockwood Drive and Park Drive. One of the neighbors at the outlet spoke with, Jackson Himes, said his mom was walking her dog when she stumbled upon a black cat who had been chopped in half. So I'll let you read the rest on your own. But no blood at the scene means they were drained of blood. And why would they do that except for ritual purposes? Just saying, guys. Witchcraft does it, and voodoo is just another form of witchcraft. There's many forms of it, and they do the same things. Now, residents of Pennsylvania town are outraged that the Civil War area orphanage might be used to house migrants. So more migrant issues again. The invasion continues as a Civil War area orphanage in the Gettysburg area of Pennsylvania is being considered for use as housing for migrants, and many residents are not happy about it. They say this is so disrespectful to the people who live in this area and to our history as a country. We don't have to do this, and more people have to start reminding our leaders of that fact. Yeah, well, they don't care. If it has gotten to the point where historic buildings are being considered for illegal border crossers, we have run out of room. Hey guys, it's not about room. so to speak. It's just about chaos and causing that chaos. This is Armageddon. This is the invasion of the United States. It has begun. Mr. Babylon is going down. And that's what I'm trying to show you with these stories. Okay. I'm not just trying to blame migrants who are into voodoo. This has to do with a plan that our government's put into place. A lot of senators and congressmen are sold out, and they are into this. They're bringing, they own companies, or their friends do. Like in Texas, one of Governor Abbott's friends owns a bus company that was being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to ship busloads of migrants up to Chicago and other places. So you see, a lot of them are in on this game. They stand in front of the microphones and pretend to be against it, but they're not. They all sit in their private little bars and laugh and chuckle and smoke cigars and drink scotch. They're all in on the game. They'll talk about stopping it, but they never do they? It just keeps getting worse. They've slowed it down because the selections are coming, I should say. But that's the only reason. The invasion still continues. And of course, the media is compliant and keeps covering it all up. Now, last but not least, definitely not least, here's the UN story. Coming up from the 20th to 21st of September, we have the Summit of the Future. Those are the action days. And then the 22nd to the 23rd. So basically all of next week, we're going to have this UN Summit of the Future going on. Well, what is this Summit of the Future? Well, it's actually a pact. Now, some are saying that, oh, it's just a gentleman's agreement. It's not really legally binding. Well, that's the problem with these gentlemen's agreements. They somehow find a way to make them legally binding. Remember, they don't want to have to go through the Senate to ratify it. That would generate too much attention. Here in the US, I'm saying. So anyway, the Summit of the Future, this is from the UN.org. From the 22nd to the 23rd, will produce an intergovernmentally negotiated, action-oriented pact for the future with chapters on sustainable development and financing for development, international peace and security. There's that peace and safety again, that the Bible keeps talking about. Then sudden destruction. Then they have science, technology, and innovation and digital cooperation, which means enslavement, youth and future generations, and transforming global governance. Look at that. Transforming global governance, excuse me. And of course, you can go through this website. I'll put the link up as always. Here's an article from the Brownstone Institute that kind of breaks it down. And they say that this is the fourth part in the series, looking at the plans of the United Nations, the UN and its agencies, designing and implementing the agenda of the Summit of the Future in New York on the 22nd through 23rd of September 2024, and its implications for global health, economic development, and human rights. Previous articles analyze the impact of the climate agenda on health policy, the UN's betrayal of its own hunger eradication agenda, and it's all corrupt, guys, and the undemocratic method of using former leaders and the wealthy to back the UN's agenda. Yeah, people like Bill Gates, and Klaus Schwab, and so on. So the UN will be holding the Summit of the Future at its headquarters in New York on the 22nd and 23rd of September, 2024, during the 79th session of the UN General Assembly. Leaders of 193 member states are expected to reaffirm their commitments to the Sustainable Development Goals, which set 2030 as the deadline for the world to achieve the 17 goals or Agenda 2030. Now remember, a couple years ago, Klaus Schwab came out and others like him and said that we need to expedite these 2030 goals to maybe 2025. And don't forget the Deagle calendar that says the population of the US will be 100 million by 2025. What happened to the 200 and some other million? Just saying. They're saying that these SDGs include poverty eradication, which would be exactly the opposite. It'll actually increase poverty. Industrial development, environmental protection, education, gender equality, peace, and partnerships. The summit's also an occasion for world leaders to reiterate commitment to the 1945 charter that laid out the purposes, governing structures, and framework of the UN. And like I said, I'll let you read the rest on your own. I just wanted to make you aware of these things because obviously it is important to be aware of. And that's it for now. I'll put all these links up on the website at don'tspeaknews.com like I always do. And but before we go back to that, I wanted to show you this real quick, guys. Here's Johnny's Substack. This is my Substack blog. This is the dashboard I have over on substack.com. This is Don't Speak Health. I try and talk about natural health and solutions for health that are all natural and not big pharma, you know, chemo or any of that stuff. Anyway, one of you donated $50 through Substack back at the end of July. So you may not realize when you looked at your card that Substack was your donation, a donation to me, because it won't show up as Don't Speak News. Okay. It'll show up as Substack, or it'll show up as Stripe, or it'll show up as Go Get Funding, depending on which link you're using to donate. Of course, PayPal is PayPal. But what's been happening is you guys are forgetting what you donated to, or it comes up as a different name, like I just said, like Substack or Go Get Funding. And then what happens is you guys call the credit card company and you say that's a fraudulent charge, when it wasn't, because you're donating voluntarily to my fundraiser. It's just people are getting confused, and it's been happening more and more often now, and it's costing me money. Now I've got that $50 frozen that I can't use, and $15, a $15 charge from Substack for processing all of the stuff I need to fight this case that Chase Bank has brought against me through Stripe, which is the credit card processor I use. So if that's you, if you donated through Substack at the end, or through the Go Get Funding at the end of July, and you're disputing the charge, well, it's costing me an extra $15 over and above the $50 that's already cost me. So understand that when you do this, guys, when you dispute these charges, that it costs me money. In this case, an extra $15 as a service fee from Substack. So, and there's nothing I can do about it. So before you do that, please call the phone number that's next to the charge, which is my phone number, and I'll tell you, hey, it's me, it's Johnny. So I've gone through this before, but it's happening more and more often now, and it's costing me too much money, guys. So please write down when you make the charge, write it down so you remember what that charge was for, so it stops costing me money when you dispute it. And that's all I got to say about that. So don'tspeaknews.com, of course, is home base for everything that we do. And if you do want to support the channel, you can do so right through the channel support tab right here. And all the links to do so are right here. There's PayPal, there's Buy Me a Coffee, there's my wish list, there's Cash App, and of course Stripe is right here through the website. You can make it one time, you can make it a custom amount, you can go monthly, yearly, whatever you decide to do. But that's the best way to do it. Or at the bottom of every blog post, there's also links to do so as well. As you scroll down, all those links are here too. And there you go. All that much more here at don'tspeaknews.com. And that's it for today. I think that's enough, right? This is quite a long episode. So thanks for putting up with me and sticking with me. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe with everyone that you know. And thank you very much for tuning in. God bless, take care. Johnny Storm, Don't Speak News.